Good afternoon, and welcome to episode 1 of Rob Explains, your daily podcast discussing and explaining cool, random, and interesting things. I am, of course, Rob. Thank you for joining me. I guess the best way to start out episode 1 is a little bit of an introduction. You may know me from the various projects that I have going on. The Oh the Anthem podcast. It's a weekly podcast available on Tuesdays at ohtheanthem.com and everywhere fine pods are casted. You may also know me from my Everyman Movie Reviews, a bi-weekly movie review that's in podcast form as well as a YouTube channel. Or you may know me from the many parody videos that I've been doing over the last couple of months. Or maybe you just know me from normal life, or perhaps you don't know me at all. So in any event, I think it would be good to kind of start at the beginning and have a short intro episode here, just telling you a little bit about me and a little bit about the show. Well, let's start with the show. What can you expect over this daily 5-minute or less podcast? Well, as I said, we're going to be discussing and explaining cool, random, and interesting things. This is actually the 4th time I have kind of started and restarted the idea that is Rob Explains. For the first few intervals of Rob Explains, it was actually Rob Explains Everything. And you can see that in the title card if you check it out wherever it is you're listening or watching this particular show. And this idea started out of a place of wanting to take a very complex subject and try to break it down in the simplest terms so that everyone can understand. I love the quote from Albert Einstein that says, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And I take that as a challenge. I think that I can explain nearly anything that I know to anyone, no matter how much knowledge or experience they have in the subject matter. And I wanted to share some of that knowledge and maybe even learn a few new things along the way and share them with everyone. But starting out with a YouTube show had some restrictions. It's a lot of production value starting up and editing a show. My very first version actually had interstitials with someone else stepping in and giving some side facts that didn't really fit the regular narrative. I tried that once, and then again about 2 years later, both on the same topic, and that's the Gunpowder Treason and Plot, Guy Fawkes and November 5th. But 2 unsuccessful tries was enough, and I gave up on the YouTube exclusive show that would be Rob Explains Everything. More recently, I sat down and did a radio show version of that show, Rob Explains Everything, and I was talking about systematic racism and defunding the police. Again, I made the focus a YouTube show where I had some audiovisual aspects and kind of explained in depth a very complicated topic. But again, the restrictions of having so much production value were very, very difficult. And what I'm looking to do is to try to open up a dialogue with people and maybe explain or discuss some interesting and cool things, but not get necessarily down into the nitty-gritty without somebody bringing up and requesting it first. So here we are, take 4 of Rob Explains Everything. This time, of course, just Rob Explains. It's going to be a short daily podcast where we're going to find a topic of the day. I'll go into a little bit of detail. Maybe it's something you've heard about before. Maybe it's something you haven't ever heard of before. Maybe it's something you know of before, or maybe it's something you've never even heard of. Maybe it's something you know a lot about, or maybe just a little. Either way, I hope that coming out of every single episode, you'll know a little bit more about that subject matter. And that comes out of a personal challenge of mine. I was a little bit of a nerdy kid in school. I like to read, I like politics, and I like science. I was the guy who took electives in college in geology and astronomy. Not easy basket weaving or sports classes, because I wanted to try something out and learn something new. I made a challenge for myself a long time ago, sometime in my teens, that I wanted to be able to have a 5-minute conversation about anything. Then, in 2006, I was able to sit down at a table during the Clinton presidential conference at Hofstra University, where I was attending, and I had a conversation with a former UN weapons inspector in Iraq from the 1990s, and the former head of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Administration. One was sitting to my left, the other to my right, and we were talking about proliferation of nuclear weapons in the Third World after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Then, I was announced as a 4th-year student at Hofstra, there to talk about the Clinton administration's foreign policy, and I gave my thoughts as a form of a presentation about Bosnia, Rwanda, and the early Clinton years of foreign policy. When I sat down, one of those guys leaned over and said, "We had no idea you were a student and that you weren't here to talk about atomic policy." That was a dream come true for me. I had been able to have a 5-minute conversation about a relatively niche topic with two experts and hold myself out as if I knew exactly what I was talking about. And the fact is, I did. So my hope is, coming out of each and every episode of Rob Explains, you'll be able to have a 5-minute conversation with anyone about the topic of the day and know exactly what it is you're talking about. Whether it's fodder for a water cooler conversation or just a conversation starter amongst friends, Rob Explains can be your source of some interesting and unique topics and a new encyclopedia of knowledge. Look for new episodes daily right here. Make sure that you subscribe. And of course, if you have subjects that you would like me to cover in these daily episodes, reach out. You can find me at rob@robexplains.com. Find Rob Explains on all your social networks, or just comment below and I'll be sure to review, and you can actually start a dialogue with me right there. I am looking forward to this project. I've made it a goal to make brand new content 7 days a week this fall, and with Rob Explains, you'll have something new to listen to every single day. Come along on this adventure with me. It's going to be fun. But until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great day, everybody.